Well, dear Mark, dear Mr. Yashar Yakush, dear Ambassador, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it can only get worse after such a very kind introduction by my friend Mark. I try not to disappoint you too much with my remarks. Let me first make maybe a short pre-remark. We're together in a rather symbolic city, Berlin, the former divided country where a wall went across the city. Berlin was more or less the symbol of the Cold War, but it is also today the symbol of the fall of the wall. So I invite you all to take the opportunity, if you have a chance, to really go out and see the city, see the many memorial sites, such as the topography of terror and many other sites. And let me use that opportunity to say I'm really proud of the people of Berlin and the people of Germany and this country that at least after all these denial of the 50s and 60s, this is a city and this is a country where we have these memorial sites and where I think Germany is dealing in a rather different way compared to other countries who were part of the Second World War with its own history. And that includes also the way what happened in the GDR, although I don't want to compare the GDR regime with the former Nazi regime, but the way we deal with history, I think, is a different one. And if you compare that with a number of Eastern European states after the fall of the Iron Curtain, the way we dealt with the Stasi, again, I think, was a very remarkable way, and I have to congratulate all those who were involved in these activities. The two Germanys prior to 1989, it's clear that the GDR was an undemocratic, an unrightful, an unfree state. The fall of the Berlin Wall marked its end and was conceived as a liberation by most in 1989. However, as I said before, one has to be very clear that this unrightful, unjust regime cannot be compared with the regime before 1945 with the Nazi regime of Germany. The people, civil society and citizen movements in the GDR, one can make maybe one distinction between what happened in the year 1889 and the so-called German revolutions. If you look into German history books, the headline should be failed German revolutions, because as you know from German history, Germans are not very good with revolutions. The revolution 1889 failed, 48 fails. Hambacher Schloss, more or less, was a failure, unfortunately. Paulskirche, unfortunately, was a failure, although it led later to the nation state and to the democratic state. But if we compare ourselves with our French neighbors, unfortunately, we have to admit we're not very good with revolutions in Germany. So we have to make a big compliment to our citizens from Eastern Germany that they made the first time in German history a revolution successful. And what makes this revolution different from other revolutions, it was a complete and entire non-violent revolution. Not a single drop of blood was used to make this revolution possible. So I believe this is really crucial and remarkable. And if we look to the outcome of the revolution, one has to see that without Neues Forum, Democracy Now!, the Church, and many other countless members of the Monday demonstrations, this peaceful revolution would have been completely impossible. We are the people was their slogan that made clear what they wanted and changed the direction of the country towards liberty and democracy. And let me also add to that, it was similar to movements in other countries, like Solidarność in Poland, like Charta 77 in Czechoslovakia, former Czechoslovakia, like Memorial in Russia, and many other movements. And we should not, as Germans, forget that without their efforts, our revolution would have been completely impossible. And if we celebrate today German reunification, it is also based on the courage of so many people in our eastern neighboring countries who went to the streets and took high risks in their struggle for democracy and for freedom. It was not just the civil society, but also parts of the political class that at one point realized that it could sustain its system of repression any longer. Let's not forget the role of Gorbachev that he played in that process. The peaceful revolution and the subsequent fall of the Berlin Wall did not only symbolically trigger the unification of Germany and eventually the myth of the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc and the fall of many dictatorships in Eastern Europe. And let me add to that, peaceful revolution is still inspiring Just take the case of the Rose Revolution in Georgia or the Orange Revolution in Ukraine. Although I have to add, there is no guarantee for the future direction if you have such a revolution, as one can see in Ukraine and in Georgia, unfortunately, where we also see some kind of backlash and rollback. What remains of the peaceful revolution? What are the relicts of 1989? One could say, if you take a look to the German Bundestag and to some of the members of the German Bundestag, a lot of Protestant priests who are members of the parliament and long beards. For the non-insiders, I have to maybe explain that. In the former GDR, the only way to express peaceful opposition and to have some kind of space where you can express different views was a church. There was no other opportunity. So to have a long beard, opposite to some perceptions in the rest of the world, here was an expression of freedom and was an expression of being independent from the regime. So that's why especially the Social Democrats, but also some other parties, still have a high number of Protestant priests in the parliament. I think that makes us very different from most of the rest of all other democratic parliaments. I haven't heard of any other democratic parliament in the world where there's so many Protestant priests running for office. The reason, as I said, is a very rational one. The ideals and memories of 1989 events are still very present in my party. Alliance 90, one part or root of the party, of the German Green Party, and its members played a big role in the peaceful revolution, and nowadays still are a vital part of our party. Greens are the only party, and I want to underline that changed its name after unification. We are the only party that's name is different from what it was before reunification. It was the Greens, and now it is Alliance 90, Die Grünen. Why did we do that? To underline the role of Alliance 90 in the peaceful revolution and those heroes who made this peaceful revolution. Former activists are now members of parliament on the state, on the federal, and on the European level. So the tree huggers, as we were called for a long time, the Greens in Germany, developed, as you can see, we also changed our outfit, not only for this event, for the demonstration where I'm participating tonight in Stuttgart. I have to get rid of my necktie again. It will get very cold there, as you might have heard. We're demonstrating in order to save the train station in Stuttgart. So you see, the Green Party has gone a long way. Joachim Gauck, I'm sure you heard that name, was one of the key figures of the peace movement and subsequently helped many Germans to come to terms with its past role in the federal, as a federal commissioner for the Stasi archives. I think this in itself is something that really deserves attention, the way we dealt with the history of the Stasi archives. His candidacy for German presidency in 2009 inspired many people. It reminded us of the importance of liberty and democracy. But he's not the only one. One could add Marianne Birtler, who is the current commissioner for the Stasi archives. One could add Werner Schulz, who is currently a member of the European Parliament. One could add Matthias Platzek, not only to give green names, who is the state prime minister of the state of Brandenburg with the Social Democrats. And one could add Bärbel Bohley, who we recently lost, unfortunately. So unfortunately also some of the former revolutionaries, unfortunately, are not under us anymore. The pillars, if I look to the pillars and the roots of green policy, of course, one of the most important one always was non-violence, beside grassroots democracy, social justice, and ecological wisdom. If you look to the first program of the Green, you can find those principles. Why I'm saying this? Because it's interesting to see the long way we went through, and with our development, in a way also the German society. The Green Party is deeply rooted also within the civil and human rights movement. A lot of our members, since Amnesty International is one of the co-sponsors of this meeting, have their roots in Amnesty, have their roots in the solidarity movements with third worlds, with global justice, and other movements of the world. But, and I think this is a very crucial point for the development of my party, but also for the development of Germany. We experienced a conflict we never thought before that can catch us. A potential conflict between non-violence on one side and the universal and invisible indivisible human rights. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The Kosovo War, the war in Afghanistan, the dispute about the war in Iraq, where we agreed that this is not part of our principles. The Kosovo conflict in 1998 and the Operation Allied Force, the NATO bombings in 1999, all those things led to unbelievable discussions in our country. Some are saying if the Greens wouldn't have been part of power in Germany, and if the Christian Democrats together with the Liberals would have been in power in Germany, probably the German direction on foreign policy would have been completely different. Because if the left would have been in opposition at that time, maybe the left would have went to the streets and organized mass demonstrations. So we were forced to realize that our two goals that we're having at the same time, and both are almost holy for us. On one side, nonviolence. On one side, the belief that war can never solve conflicts. And on the other side, we were confronted with the pictures we saw in Kosovo, the pictures we saw from Al-Qaeda and the others in Afghanistan. So we had to make a decision. And one new perspective for us, but I would go beyond that also for Germany, was that war, under certain conditions, unfortunately, can also be used as a humanitarian intervention. And we had to realize that pacifism is a difference between individuals and between states. So this is an ongoing debate that is, as you can follow in the debate about Afghanistan, continuing in our country and moving a lot of people in our society. Let me close by some remarks about German unity beyond East and West. German unity is beyond the unity of East and West Germany. A united Germany in 2010, in my opinion, must go one step further. In 1989, Germans from East Germany and Germans from West Germany came together and assembled under one new umbrella as the United Germany. But in my opinion, beside its glory, it's also a history of a missed opportunity. Why am I saying a missed opportunity? Because in my opinion, it would have been an incredible chance to go that one step further and say we also include the people of non-German origin under that bigger umbrella of the new reunified Germany. Today I believe it's still not too late. So I think if we want to complete the reunification process of Germany, it is time to say that non-Germans, people of non-German origin from both sides, from East and from West, as you know, in East we also had people from the so-called brother states, Mozambique, Angola, Vietnam, Cuba and other countries, and in the West the so-called guest workers, my forefathers. They also belong to this country, they're taxpayers, so I think it would make sense to also define what makes this new Germany. In my opinion, that can only be a republican Germany, a Germany that is based on one constitution, and everybody who is willing to share this constitution, everybody who shows effort to speak the official language. I had to do that as well, by the way, because I was speaking a German accent, a German dialect of the southwest of Germany, Swabian. So everybody who shows effort to speak the official language and everybody who adapts to the labor market, to the school system, in my opinion, is welcome and belongs to our country and should become a citizen. And I believe this is in the very interest of the majority and of this country. Let me conclude by some concern. I've talked about the great way we left behind and the successes we had. But if I look around in Europe, and that includes my own country, Germany, if I see Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, if I see how he's playing with democratic parties and with the government, if I see what's happening in France with the Roma crisis, if I see the reaction vis-à-vis the European Commission, if I see that big countries in the European Union think that they have different rights from smaller countries inside the European Union, if I see that we have conditions towards potential member states who want to join the European Union, as Turkey, and Yashar Bey knows that very well, and if I see how we ourselves are behaving different from the countries that we want to join the European Union, I think we have to talk about our values. Populist movements in Europe are a serious threat to us, and we need more time to discuss that, what this means for our experience from 1889. I don't think that the movements of 1889, what they inspired was this kinds of racist, anti-Semitic, anti-Muslim movements. So one of the heritages of this movement should be that we should stand united and together against all kinds of populist movements under which umbrella, whatever they assemble. Thank you very much, and I wish you a great discussion. And unfortunately, I cannot participate in the following debates, although I would have loved to listen to other speakers. And as always, I enjoy to be with the ICD. Thank you.